A very good evening. The time is 7 o'clock. The 2023 gubernatorial and state assembly elections held on the 18th of March 2023. It met some loopholes, especially regarding the participation of persons with disabilities. Despite the preparation made ahead to smoothing the participation of persons with disabilities, the data received from TAF Africa's Persons with Disabilities Election Hub from field observers showed that assistive tools were not provided in some polling units. And in other polling units, persons with disabilities were not allowed to enjoy priority voting. If not addressed, these can strengthen the already existing voter apathy among the community of persons with disabilities in the subsequent off-circle election. This is our focus today on the program Disability Inclusion. And we have our guests with us in the studio to talk about the 2023 gubernatorial and state assembly elections, the participation of persons with disabilities, the challenges they encountered, and some recommendations which they'll be having for us. So our first guest is Edika Samuel. He's the Monitoring and Evaluation Officer of TAF Africa. Good evening and welcome to the program.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
We also have George Awani, the Assistant Program Manager, TAF Africa. Glad to have you, George, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Jenica. Good evening, listeners.
Last on our list is Lynn Algocha. She'll be joining us today. She's the Communication Officer of TAF Africa. Welcome to the program, Lynn, and good evening.
Well, good to see you again, Jennifer.
All right, you know this program is audience participatory, so the WhatsApp number is 0908 875 7496. I take that slowly 0908 875 7496. We are talking about the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly election held this year. We're reviewing the participation of persons with disabilities. We're trying to look at some challenges they encountered and the way forward. Perhaps you observed how a person with disability or the community of persons with disabilities voted during the just concluded election. Kindly let us know. We're calling out the phone lines shortly and make sure you contribute to the program today. Once again, we're talking about the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly election. Now, let's get to hear from our guests. I'd like to start from Edika. What's your opinion of the process in the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly election?
All right, thank you, Jennifer. In answering this, I'm going to look at 4 parameters. I'll look at technology, I'll look at priority voting, I'll look at assistive devices, and I'll look at security. With regards to technology, looking at how the beavers functioned and the transmission of results. And just to say, we had deployed across 340 polling units for the gubernatorial elections, and we only recorded this time only about 22% malfunction of the beavers, compared to the presidential, where that percentage was quite higher. And also for the transmission of results, we recorded over 85% where the results were transmitted from the polling unit using the beavers. So that was an improvement from the presidential elections where it was quite low. It was about 50 something percent from the polling units we observed. Then moving on to priority voting, we also recorded a priority voting of about 83% in the gubernatorial elections, where INEC was giving priority voting to PWDs who came to the polling units to cast their votes. This was also better compared to what we experienced at the presidential elections. Then with regards to assistive devices, that's where we had a bit of, would I say, downfall there, because for the Braille, at the start of the day, all we had was provision of Braille ballot guide was just at 24%. Magnifying glasses was at 14%. This was at the beginning when the election started. And large font posters was about 24% also thereabouts. Although at the end of the day, we recorded the provision of Braille ballot guide at 36%, magnifying glasses at 24%, and large font posters at 67%. Now, this was at an all-time low because we expected INEC to, you know, to have done better in providing these assistive devices for PWDs to enable them vote. And especially look at magnifying glasses, for example, INEC had committed to supplying about 21,165. So we on this end, we are perturbed why we only recorded 24% across the polling units that we observed. And lastly, I'll talk about security. This was generally peaceful for us. We recorded about over 80% peaceful elections across the polling units across the 28 states.
Okay.
So it's just only pockets of violence that were reported from places like Lagos that kind of brought that number down. So, but this was better, yes, compared to the previous elections.
Okay, Mr. George, you were here the Saturday after the 25th of February, that's during the presidential election, and we talked about, some of the issues he raised, that's Edika. What's your assessment of the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly election?
Yeah, so just like he already said, there is improvement. It's like INEC hit to the recommendations made, from our observations in the field during the presidential elections. So there is, in fact, one of the major things that marked the presidential elections was the late arrival of INEC staff and electoral materials. So, but this time around, there is an improvement. Like he mentioned, during the presidential, we have early arrival at 58%. Of the polling units, but the gubernatorial we're having 87%. That is.
What of the provision of the assistive devices? You mentioned 36%, 14%. I think it's quite low.
Yeah. So that was early. That was early during the day, but that improved. For the gubernatorial Braille ballot guide, we have 36%.
Okay.
So that is an improvement from 24% during the presidential elections. All right. So, and when you look at magnifying glasses, during the gubernatorial elections, we have 24%, but during the presidential elections, we're having 21%. So that is 3% improvement. All right. And then when you look at the large font graphics for our hard in hearing, that is those who have hearing impairment, the proportion was 67% for the gubernatorial. When you look at for the presidential, we had 58% provision of large font graphic posters for for those who have hearing problems. So that is an improvement in the gubernatorial.
Okay. Lee, you're the communication officer. How will you assess or evaluate, the level of cooperation, especially communication between organizations like TAF and the disability community, especially, registered voters, the registered persons with disabilities who came out to vote?
So I don't think I got that question. What's the relationship between what?
The communication level, how do you rate it? How do you assess
between TAF Africa and the
INEC and the disability community in terms of this election?
Okay, so the thing is, beyond the disability community, I think there was a communication gap which we actually mentioned.
Okay.
So many persons, the INEC tried to decongest polling units. So, and there was no proper communication. Some persons went to their polling unit and they found out that this is not their polling unit anymore, and it really affected persons with disabilities. So it's beyond persons with disabilities. It was just a general problem, the communication gap between INEC and the public.
Okay. All right, it's still Disability Inclusion coming to you live from the network service of Radio Nigeria. We are evaluating and looking at the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly elections held on the 18th of March 2023. You can start making your contribution and participate on the show. Let us know what you think about the just concluded gubernatorial election. especially the participation of persons with disabilities. Call any of these numbers: 0705 149 3324 or 0915 So we'll be coming up with our news updates. Make sure that your fingers are just on top of the screen of your phone if you're using a smartphone, because we'd like to hear from you. If you're joining us on Facebook, it's at TAF Africa, on Instagram at TAF Africa, on Twitter at TAF Africa. Ensure you drop your comments on our live feeds. My name is still Jennifer on the program Disability Inclusion. Do stay with us.
They should have done that. You said security was better.
No,
I think
across our polling units, yeah.
Is it as related?
He
Is it as related to persons with disability or generally?
I was talking generally from the polling units we observed.
No, it's talking about the polling unit we observe.
So
We were not everywhere.
Please always add
When I
that.
said it, I added it.
No, I didn't hear that. That's why I'm coming back.
I added it.
If you are talking about it, because we're talking in relationship with persons with disability or the ones you
Yes, if you go back, I added it. I was very sure there was.
I didn't hear it. That's why I'm coming back.
You can play it, it's fine. 340 polling units, I said it.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry for that. So when we come back after the news, hello, listen. After the news, we're going for sound.
Okay.
We're playing Tubaba.
TAFAfrica.co, right?
So this you correct is actually in. So the data received in the election hall.
The data is received in South Africa's from who?
From the field observer. So the data was received in the hall from the observers.
Then see this. Is it you? I don't know if it's Mr. Steven. Last week's.
Mr. Stephen. Mr. Stephen that usually don't copy and paste and he doesn't edit all of these things.
This girl didn't pronounce my village correctly. She just mentioned my village. She didn't pronounce it well.
What village is that?
Owa Aleru. She said Owa Aleru.
Cross Rivers.
No, that's not. So when people are asking questions, I don't know. Sorry, I'll tell you what I'm saying. Okay, so if like you're here, you get is the monitoring and evaluation, right, officer? It's the program manager. Yeah, the project. So questions are supposed to be posed according to your definition.
So I was going to say that to you just that anything that has to do with technology, just like this question.
Yes, I've already ticked
This is
actually
the M&E. So anything that has to be programmatic, okay, this one. So this and this is for him. So
this could be for the program manager.
Yeah, one yeah, just that it, but I don't like I'm not really part of this thing that even just box this area. But number 5, I just want to speak to number 5 only.
Okay.
And the rest is just other.
Jennifer asked any question. She said
She knows everything. Who is
So, Baba,
no, this guy.
who is that? Maybe the engineer, studio engineer. You have never seen, how many times do you come here?
I mean, God, brother.
Or how many while?
Yes.
No worry, I'll go to the airport. You will come this way.
Last month, I come back. Meeting. I tell you, this one for me. She disappointed me. Try to give you the gist. Amanda girls. And that time I found out a small embassy allowance. Okay, for them to go and download it. There's too early. I think we need to get consistent meaning so that we know if somebody is going online and going to see it in such. Because sometimes I say, sometimes I say, the brother is
Can't hear you. I can't hear you. All right, even though we do not understand the epic language, but the disappointment there is something that's inevitable in life, and you make sure that you have alternative plans in cases where disappointment faces. The program is still Disability Inclusion, the Network Service of Radio Nigeria, and we're talking about the just concluded 2023 gubernatorial and state assembly elections as it affects persons with disabilities. Once again, we have staff members from TAP Africa, Monitoring and Evaluation Officer Edikan Samuel, the Assistant Program Manager George Awai, and the Communication Officer Lina Aguncha. My name is Jennifer Ogo on the program, and continuing our discussion, let's talk about the mechanisms that TAP Africa use in receiving real-time data from the observers deployed in polling units with registered persons with disabilities. So that question will be thrown to you, Edika.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. For these elections, we still used our PW data dashboard first in deploying our observers. And for those who may not know, the data dashboard, it just shows the distribution of registered voters with disabilities across polling units in Nigeria. So we use that to, first of all, deploy our observers to the field. And like I stated earlier, we had deployed observers to 314 polling units across the country. And that's where we got our data from. So, and the technique we also used was to ensure that, look, we're sending observers to where we have a high concentration of persons with disabilities. So we're not just sending them to any polling units. So where there's a high number of PWDs, we're sending the observers there. So then again, we had also developed an election observer app, which we've said before on this radio program, and that's what the observers use to send in data to us at the situation room. And the observer app also has the function of eyewitness, so you don't have to be an observer for you to use the app. So once you download the app, which is available on Play Store and iOS, you could send us eyewitness reports on the day, which lots of people did. Even media personnel sent us that. And then again, in our situation room, we had the election monitoring dashboard. So in real time, we're getting the data from the field. So as the observers are sending in their forms, they have the opening form to send to us, voting and accreditation form to send, and the closing form, and it all came into us in real time, and that's what we use for our press conferences on the day.
Okay, thank you so much. The program is still Disability Inclusion Network Service of Radio Nigeria. Now let's move over to our communication officer. What do you think INEC could have done better to foster an inclusive process for PWDs?
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. So, if we want to discuss, or if we want to have an inclusive, PWD inclusive election in this country, we have to start with the continuous voter registration process. So during CVR, number one is that CVR should be accessible for persons with disabilities. We know what the crowd is like when people go to register for their voters card. So we have to make the process accessible, because if I'm a person with disability and I go to those places and I see the crowd and there is no special provision made for me, I'll go back. So we'll have to start from there. Then the actual collection of these PVCs, it should be made accessible for persons with disabilities too. Special queues should be maintained. They should be given priority when they come to pick up their PVCs. Because if we leave all of those processes and jump to priority voting, that will not make any sense, because you have to count one before counting two. These are the processes. Then during the election, INEC should be able to provide these assistive tools like they promised. And it's not like it's a favor, it's something that is in the Electoral Act, section 54, subsection 1 and 2. And beyond that, INEC should be able to train their staff on inclusive elections. Some of the polling units that we deployed persons with disabilities, they were not allowed priority voting, because these staff, they're not aware, they don't know what priority voting is. Maybe they're not expecting persons with disabilities in their polling units. So if we want to get serious about this thing, at every stage that leads to the actual election, that leads to the voting day, persons with disabilities should be given priority from start to finish. That way we can have a holistic, inclusive election, and persons with disabilities will be willing to participate, because beyond the general elections, we have all sorts of elections coming up as well. And we still want persons with disabilities to participate, because they form a reasonable number of the entire population.
Okay. And Mr. George, how do we, because this priority voting is something we began, like I think almost towards the end of last year to this moment, we've been hammering on the 2023 general election, and with the results we have now, I will say, as a presenter of this program, I'm not quite impressed, because we were quite prepared, as a foundation, as a civil society organization. How do we intensify efforts in amplifying this right to priority voting for persons with disabilities, especially during elections?
Okay, before I get to that question, I want to say again, I earlier said that there is an improvement from the presidential elections coming to the gubernatorial elections.
Okay.
And I want to say that improvement, the figures changed a bit,
Okay.
but we are still not impressed. I want to sound that, let it sink that yes, INEC should have done better than this. All right, so that said, concerning priority voting, it's like Lynn said, it's a right. It's not a charity case. Gone are the days when PWDs are seen as charity cases. PWDs are citizens, they are human beings, and this right should be accorded, especially that this is there in the Electoral Act. So what we need a massive campaign. TAB is doing its bit, CSOs are doing their bit. This is not just a PWD issue, it is a national issue. It is a developmental issue. Now, if we get this right, I tell you the truth, one of the indices, one of the things that shows, one of the indicators that shows development is inclusion. How inclusion a nation is points to the level of its development. So if we are not inclusive as a nation, it shows that we are still far away from development. And that is the reality. Check the developed nations, you will see these indices there. All right, so it's important that everybody takes this as their own, it is not just PWDs, it is for everyone, every citizen, not just INEC, everybody should be involved, but especially INEC. I want to reemphasize on what Lynn said concerning the training of INEC staff. We observe that from the presidential down to the gubernatorial, that some of them don't understand these things. So if INEC staff don't understand this, what do you expect from other people? So INEC should set the precedence. INEC should put this in place. Their staff should be well trained. One of the recommendations you asked me for INEC is that their staff should be thoroughly trained. They should be well trained to be able to handle elections in Nigeria, especially elections that have to do with inclusivity. All right. So, and then every citizen, National Orientation Agency also have the work to do here. That if these things are there and provided for in the act, then every citizen should know this, so that when people come, because sometimes some polling units, you observe that from the early stage, there may be priority voting. But along the line, when pressure increases, the number of people increases, then you see that, everybody say, I am also a person with disability. Poverty is social disability. You hear things like that. So we need everybody to understand this and own this. All right. So I see National Orientation Agency having a role to play here, sensitizing people across the nation, and every agency of government and all CSO and every organization and every individual, in fact, every family. Parents should also know this and then talk to their children about it. So everybody should, even in churches, in mosques, everywhere, religious organization, and every organization, as a matter of fact, should take this very seriously. Persons with disability need to, have to vote. It is their right, and they should be given that due respect. Thank you.
All right, 0705 149 3324, 0705 149 3324, or 0915 091 0482, 0915 091 0482. We are streaming on our social media handles on Facebook at TAF Africa, on Instagram and Twitter at TAF Africa NG. Yes, so make sure you drop in your comments regarding the topic of discussion for today. We can't do this alone, so let us know how well you observed the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly election. Did you actually observe a person with disability and how he or she voted and the treatment they actually, got regarding the process? Do let us know right now by dialing any of these numbers. Now let's move on to Edika. The Electoral Act 2022 provides that persons. Yes, we have our first call on the program. Hello, good evening. Good evening, sir. Glad to have you on the program today. Thank you, sir. Okay. Mm. Mm. Thank you so much. Thank you. Always a pleasure having you, sir. Almost like you are part of this program. Sincerely, I appreciate you and do not take your commitment for granted. All right, you can be a participant by dialing 0705 149 3324 or 0915 You can drop your comments on our live videos right now. We have Jerry Obo. Your message just gotten now, on our Facebook live. And he's saying, I'm Jerry Ogo from Abuja. I would like to appreciate South Africa for the good work they are doing for the community of persons with disabilities in Nigeria. They have really used technology to project the PWD in Nigeria, and it has shown from the data how they roll out. So this is the first time we are getting data of how PWD participated in any general election. Thumbs up for South Africa for the lead. Thank you so much, Jerry. That was a good observation, and I'm happy that people like you are actually looking out for persons with disabilities and getting involved. So you can participate in the program, if not by calling, just drop in your comment or your contribution by our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram handles because you're streaming live. I don't know if this question should go to Mr. George or Dean. Mr. Chief Fidel actually mentioned a question I was going to ask later in the program, and it's about sanctions because we are talking about participation, we're talking about treating or relating with persons with disabilities from the human rights approach now, not from the charity-based approach. So, he said most people were, some persons with disabilities in their polling units were given priority voting out of sympathy, which shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So when we talk about sanctions now, the Election Observers app, like Edika mentioned, was quite, helpful during the election. Did you get complaints, reports of how a person with disability was probably maltreated or, not given his or her rights? Edika.
All right. I remember seeing a couple of eyewitness reports from our
Okay.
observers. I'm not so sure of the state, but they had two visually impaired persons there.
Okay.
And firstly, there was no assistive device for them, so no braille ballot guide.
Okay.
And I think the observer they tried to call the attention of the INEC officials, but they were not just interested
Okay,
at
just
that particular,
assistive devices.
yeah, at that particular polling unit.
Okay.
So with regards to PWD harassment, I
Yes.
think that's where your question bounds about. We got some data, which was, it just showed about 7% where, they had issues or they were refused voting.
Mm.
So, but I didn't verify exactly, so that's why I didn't want to talk on that. But it was quite low.
Okay.
Anything around harassment of PWDs.
Okay, now, Emily or Mr. Josh, the way you are looking at me, let's talk about sanctions now because we don't want to just be reporting. Let's see, penalties, sanctions being put into action as regards persons with disabilities. Where are we at right now, Mr. George?
Okay, yeah. So the amendment in this electoral act was done 2022. So it's a new amendment.
Okay.
And so we are looking at the implementation. And I like the fact that you are asking this question in terms of sanction. Because like he was saying, I was really interested in what he was saying because we had a discussion in the meeting concerning this issue of sympathy ground.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, PWDs are not charity cases, all right? So you are not giving them priority voting simply because that's what is happening. In Africa, we are sympathetic, we are compassionate like that. So you just see someone, having a challenge and you want to just help them. But we have to move from that charity approach to human rights approach of disability. Now we have to look at, and we have the law, like we all know, the act, as amended 2022. It's important that we recognize the rights of persons with disability to be granted priority during voting. Okay, so from this point, we need to begin to look at penalties, how these people, anybody violating this is sanctioned. I know that we have a lot of issues when it comes to sanctions against those who violate electoral laws. We still have a lot of issues because this has to do with INEC. This has to do with INEC. There are a lot of cases of violation of the electoral act that sometimes INEC complain. We have a lot of cases we are not able to, handle all of them. And I think there should even be a court for sanctioning or for handling electoral offenses. That will give it a robust platform to actually sanction these issues because it is also part of the electoral.
Okay. I believe we are getting okay.
I just want to say something. So beyond the sanctions or before the sanctions, the thing is, the awareness level is low. It's really very low. When you ask somebody, maybe a passerby, do you know about the Electoral Act or what it says about disability, or do you know about disability rights? People don't know. So when you get to the polling unit and people are allowing, maybe you see a blind person and they're letting the person enjoy priority voting from a place of pity. If you ask the person, do you know what the Electoral Act says?
Do you know
they don't know.
They don't know.
So this is why TAF Africa, we use platforms like this to educate, but we can't do it alone. This is where NOA comes in. This is where NCPWD comes in. This is where even INEC comes in to keep educating people, telling people about disability rights. That is, it's a fundamental right that we persons with disabilities should enjoy in Nigeria.
All right. So we welcome contributions from you 0705 1493324 0915 If you're just joining us, the program is Disability Inclusion coming to you live from the network service of Radio Nigeria. My name is still Jennifer Obo, your host. Do stay with us as we take a time out just in a short while. Just stay with us.
I'm supposed to provide you water.
Small water.
She knows they catch. You're supposed to be giving Jennifer water.
Small water for guests.
The water is produced by me by
Are you buying?
I didn't know that. Don't just go back. Come let's have the feet when I come to me. I'm taking the moon. This is like the balance and all.
Times a day. I go to go.
What's the time?
You want to thank go. Don't go. What do they talk about? Oh, that's goodness.
Shall come in Jesus' name.
Thanks for staying tuned on the program Disability Inclusion right here, Radio Nigeria. We are talking about the 2023 just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly elections. We're talking about the participation of persons with disabilities, the challenges they probably faced, and some recommendations, especially for INEC and the organizations involved, like CSOs and other organizations. Basically, we have members of TAF Africa with us, the monitoring and evaluation officer, the assistant program manager, and the communication officer, Edikan Samuel, George Awai, and Lynn Abucha, respectively. Now, Edika, I want you to talk again to reiterate some of the benefits of the Election Observer app. Is it just for this election, or is there for anybody to download to make, like, will it still be in usage even after this election season here in Nigeria?
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you for that question. The Election Observer app for South Africa is going to be used for future elections also. So even starting with the upcoming off-cycle elections this year in Kogi and Bayelsa, we're going to use the app also to get data. And the same with our election monitoring dashboard, because the app works hand in hand with the dashboard. So all these are going to be used for all future elections. And now the benefits for it is, like, the eyewitness part of it is really interesting because, like I said, you don't have to be an observer of TAF Africa for you to use the app. So if you download the app, you go on Play Store or Apple Store and download, just type in Election Observer app. You can send us eyewitness reports, and during that election period, we'll get it in real time and we can act on it and provide feedback and try and resolve that issue.
Okay, so I just want to add something. So beyond the electoral season, the eyewitness report future of that app, it's not something that people should use just during the election period.
Okay.
So once you see something that has to do with the violation of the rights of anybody with disability, you can use that app, that feature of that app to actually report. So that is, if you're not our observer, if you're not our accredited observer, you can use that app. If you see maybe PWD harassment, maybe it's not happening during election, you report to us, because that app will be consistently in use. We want to get feedbacks of violation of the rights of persons with disabilities.
All right. 0705149332 0915091048 to that number to call on the program Disability Inclusion. Now, what interventions should be made to rebuild the confidence of the disability community in the electoral process, Mr. George?
Okay. This last election, we have identified all the issues and the challenges, that came with the elections and how it affects persons with disabilities. And to be honest with you, after the presidential elections, a lot of people, got discouraged concerning the process. So it's very important that INEC, starting with INEC, because before the elections, we had a lot of advocacy. It's not just other organizations. We are out there saying persons with disability should.
Okay, good evening. Sorry, Mr. George. I think it's called. Hello, good evening. Good evening, sir. What's your name and location? Is this your first time of calling on this program? Are you dealing? Okay, go ahead. Okay, no problem. Thank you so much for calling, by the way. So, what do you have for us, Ayodele? Hello? Hello? Ayodele, are you there? Sorry, we didn't get your question. During okay. Are you a person with disability? Sorry for asking. Okay, okay, okay. This question will actually be for INEC, I suppose. But it's an opportunity that maybe might be worth exploring. I don't know, but we don't have an answer to that question. If you think of the possibility, maybe you can just suggest it to INEC. So is that all you have for us? Okay, thank you so much for calling. We hope to hear from you next time. Thank you, Ayodele. Have a nice night. All right, so I don't know what you think, you guys. I don't know what to think of that, but is it
Speaking
possible
of
to?
electronic voting,
Yes, is that possible
so
here
I
in
mean, you can
Nigeria?
explore it. Kaduna State started electronic voting, not using phone, not using Android phone, but some gadgets that
Okay.
NFI started with for the local government elections. So,
Okay.
and it was done. So it can be done if you are serious about it.
Okay, and of course, if the level of transparency is high,
Exactly.
because
So
I
there are a
think
lot
that's
of
something
things
that
that
we
come with that. So we have to be ready to
consider. All right, you
handle
can
it.
participate in the program by calling 0705 149 3324 or 0915 091 048 to 0705 149 3324 or 0915 091 0482. We're streaming on our social media handles on Facebook at Half Africa, on Twitter and Instagram at half_Africa. All right, let us give you an information. Yes, right here, live. So, what the Electoral Act says about disability inclusion, section 54, subsection 1 and 2. So, it says a voter with visual impairment or other forms of disability who is otherwise unable to distinguish symbols or who suffers from any other physical disability may be accompanied into the polling unit by a person chosen by him or her, or that person shall, after informing the presiding officer of the disability, be permitted to accompany the voter into the voting compartment and assist the voter to make his or her remark in accordance with the procedure prescribed by the Commission. Number two is the Commission shall take reasonable steps to ensure that persons with disabilities, special needs, vulnerable persons are assisted at the polling place by the provision of suitable means of communication such as Braille, large embossed prints, electronic devices, sign language interpretation, or off-site voting in appropriate cases. So the program is still disability inclusion on the network service of Radio Nigeria Time, where we give you the star of the week. And the star of the week is Adenike Oyetunde. To stay with us on the program. Well, thank you so much, Jemima Paul. Hope that message was inspiring, not just for persons with disabilities, but also to you without any form of disability. The program is Disability Inclusion, live on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We're talking about the just concluded gubernatorial and state assembly election and how it concerns persons with disabilities. The elections are over. What other interventions for the disability community should we expect from South Africa?
Yeah, there was a thought we were discussing before you called came in.
Okay,
and
so
we
you would like
concluded
to
on
continue.
that
So please
concerning
go ahead.
confidence
Yes.
in INEC, like confidence for persons.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, the simple thing is INEC should keep to their promises. When you promise, keep to the promise. They promise to deliver assistive devices, and from the data we got, that was poorly done. So it's very important that INEC come clean, explain what happened, and assure persons with disabilities of, of how will I put it now? Assure persons with disabilities that this will not repeat itself. Because a lot of campaigns went, a lot of advocacy concerning what INEC is doing and how inclusive election is going to be. Even for some of us, like TAP, for example, who have also been out there campaigning, advocating and talking to PWs to come out and vote. So it's we have a lot of things to, we don't even know what to say to person with disability out there when INEC is not able to do it. So there is a lot that INEC needs to do to restore confidence in INEC and in the electoral process in Nigeria.
Okay, as regards this provision of assistive devices, do you think, is it solely just for the government and INEC alone, or are other CSOs or non-governmental organizations now obliged to actually assist in making provisions for some of these devices?
Making provision, it is INEC. INEC is the election management body. INEC is in charge of elections in Nigeria. There may be support from other organizations, but INEC is the one managing elections.
Okay.
It is INEC's duty. It is INEC that's supposed to do that.
Okay. All right, 070514933324, 070514933324, 0915091048. Now, let's talk about the interventions for the disability community. What should we expect from South Africa moving forward? I really want to commend us, South Africa, for what we've done so far. From where we're coming from and where we are now, we've really achieved quite a lot, but I don't think we're resting at this point. All right, so what should we be expecting, from us? Anything to look forward to? Lynn, you have an answer to that question?
Well, okay, so we'll have a program coming on. So I don't know if I'm supposed to unveil now. I don't know if I'm supposed to unveil now, but okay, my colleague gave me a signal. No,
Okay,
so
we should expect.
but then we should expect something, and that is a follow-up of this election.
All right.
Yes, okay. So and beyond that, we're still the national population and housing census is coming up.
Yeah.
So we're working on inclusive census as well.
All right.
So that is, although we are yet to unveil the thing for elections, that after elections, but then we are working towards that. We're working with MPC for inclusive census.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, to say it's not just PWD eligible voters we are looking at even during the elections. We're also looking at candidates with disabilities, personal disabilities who are candidates running for various offices, and we'll be supporting them, during the process up to this point. But of course, we're yet to collate the data of how it went. We're going to have a meeting with them next week, and then to see who succeeded, who couldn't succeed, and all of that. And then we're also looking at training them, those who succeeded. So, like she said, a lot of things are going to be coming out, but not now. When they come out, we'll launch it.
All right. So, are there other recommendations that you have probably for persons with disabilities, CSOs, NGOs, just those involved regarding disability inclusion? Because, from all right, we have all right, we'll go on a quick music break. All right, just stay with us. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up the program.
Inspirational.
Together as one. Lucky you there. I is from your point. I'm stopping you because from your points, like you're rounding off already.
Really?
Your mind. I mean, the way your story is going. It's too heavy, I mean. Don't worry, we'll get to another one. Something like this. So let's look at the we're talking about you may not tell us what you have in store, but I actually want to find out from you. Data. How do you want to use data going forward? I mean, in respect of persons with disability.
So those are recommendations like going forward. Maybe one should
Yes, I want to ask you.
Towards INEC here, because that's one of the things I want to say. We need to use data, and that's what will help us.
In fact, I'm particular about data.
Yeah. So when that's
you see how somebody just reacted to what you said. He's very impressed because it gives a very clear picture of what's on. Please,
progress level.
Yes, yeah. Please dwell on data.
All right.
Thank you. Data.
I'll make it too difficult. They asked Philip one question last week. I did 2 weeks ago.
You're listening to me.
It's about to leave, not come on my phone. I'll leave.
Oh, this is 7.
This might should be possible.
All right. So if you actually want to go far, you just go alone. But if you want to achieve more and go further, we have to come together to make that achievement. And that's what we're all about on the program Disability Inclusion, coming to you live from the network service of Radio Nigeria. Yes. So the process or the attitude of disability inclusion does not come from the government alone. So irrespective of your age, gender, status, designation, we have to come together to make sure that we foster and improve disability inclusion in Nigeria. My name is still Jennifer Ogo on the program Disability Inclusion, coming to you live from the network service of Radio Nigeria. And we are talking about the just completed gubernatorial and state assembly elections held on the 18th of March. My next question now goes to Etika, and let's talk about the use of data. How can we, as the communication, monitoring and evaluation officer, how do you think we can best use data to, monitor the progress level of disability inclusion here in Nigeria?
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Like I stated earlier, we had developed a PWD data dashboard. Which shows registered voters with disability across polling units in Nigeria. And the number we have there is about 85,362 registered voters with disabilities. However, it's of importance to state that this number was gotten only at the recently concluded CVR, which was done. And this data is INEC data. INEC has the same data. However, on the dashboard, which you can access at electionhub.org.ng. We present the data in a very user-friendly manner. And it's now for the data, data is important because even in provision of assistive devices, you cannot distribute assistive devices if you do not have data. And that's why we're in one of our recommendations, we want to know how did INEC, what methodology did they use in distributing this? Because if we are using the data, we won't be having these issues we're having. You get, and also it's also important that we keep capturing more data so that we can know where persons with disabilities are across the nation. And that's why I'm also so excited about this census that is coming up and how inclusive it's going to be because we're going to capture more data. So it's important that we use this data to, what do they call it? To ensure that there's priority voting and there is assistive devices at the right places for PWDs. And just to state also, INEC, to be fair to them, they make some efforts, to be honest. However, in M&E, there's something we do. We monitor and we evaluate. So it's key that INEC comes back to the drawing table. Okay, where did we get it wrong, so that they can correct the mistakes. They need to have that session has to go on, and also interact with OPDs, interact with NGOs like ours, and let's know, where did they go wrong, so that we can correct it and how we can use data more efficiently to meet the needs of PWDs. Yeah.
Okay. Any message now for persons with disabilities or those involved, those who can really contribute vastly to disability inclusion in Nigeria? Do you have any message for them, Mr.
Yes,
President?
I want to talk to persons with disability directly as their brother. Persons with disability should not be discouraged, despite all the challenges. It's one of those things that happen in life. Disability itself is a challenge, and we have been able to, live with it to this point. I want to say that persons with disabilities should not be discouraged. They should not say because of the things that have happened, maybe the challenges that came with the elections, we're not going to come out again. No, it's a process. Democracy is a process. Development is a process. Inclusion is also a process. We've started something, foundations are laid. Of course, it comes with challenges, but let's not give up at this point. We're making progress. We'll get there.
Definitely. Any last words, Dean?
Okay, actually, just to enforce what my colleague Edikan had already said, one of our recommendations was actually to INEC to do a proper audit of how assistive tools were deployed during the election. So, because we had polling units where, let's say polling unit A, what the kind of the cluster of disability that they have is visually impaired, and then the assistive tool deployed their large font posters. So they should come back. So if a blind person goes to the polling unit, the person does not see a braille ballot graph. What the person sees is a large font. It's a problem. So they should go back and let's see how did you work with civil societies, work with OPDs, try to find out what went wrong, collect data and do a good deployment of these assistive tools. And then I'm encouraging the entire public to download the TAP Africa Election Observer app. It's available on App Store, it's available on Play Store. So Android users, iOS users can actually go download this app and use it to entrench disability and disability inclusion in our society.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for coming to the program today. We sincerely appreciate you. And to all of those who called, Chief Fidel from Owerri, thank you so much, sir. We sincerely appreciate your contribution. Ayo Dele from Akure, thank you. Today was my first time hearing your voice. I hope to hear from you next time if you're listening. Thank you so much. And Jerry Obo, who made his contribution via our Facebook Live. So we actually want to emphasize that in cases where you're unable to reach us via the telephone, ensure that you join us because we stream on our social media handles, especially on Facebook at TAF Africa NG or TAF Africa on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much. All right, the engineers on duty, thank you so much. The studio manager has been Afoni Gweze. So for more information on the activities of TAF Africa, visit the website at www.tafafrica.co, or for contributions, questions, or even sponsorship, you can send the message to 0703 110 3773, 0703 110 3773, or 0701 977 3352. This program is brought to you by TAF Africa and funded by the European Union through its support to democratic governance in Nigeria. Many thanks to the producer, Stephen Isabo. Until next time, I remain your host, Jennifer Ogo. Bye for now and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, Jennifer. Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming.
Now I can fight Mr. Steve. Jenny, where did you see that?
Please, can we take a photo?
Mr. Steve, now I want to fight you.
Mr. Stephen, please.
No, sir.
Can you help us with this?
Stop fighting me. I know best strength.
Mr. Steve, now I can fight you.
Please, can we stop the live?
Link, can you see-
Link, please.